What? Another video? Yeah, just don't watch. Turn away. I'm doing too many videos. Playing with my $5 dragon too. Because you can't see it that well. Anyway, surprisingly in the last 2 or 3 days, I guess 2 days, reading new comics, I've really been enjoying my DC comics. Which reminds me that I was on a discussion of DC's Rebirth, and I think I was the only one who really loved DC's Rebirth in that discussion. I'll try to remember to link it below. It's on Longbox Reviews video channel and soon to be turned into a podcast. Anyway, I just finished the new Superman. I don't know why it says Empire of Evil on the cover. The Zero Ultimatum, because it's about Superman Zero, the other Superman that came before Kenan Kong, our new Superman, our Chinese Superman. So yeah, the Empire of Evil, I don't know, it seems like someone just stuck that on the cover to try to make it more exciting. But this was an exciting issue that doesn't need more than is in here. It is packed with cool stuff, starting with this description of a Buddhist view of the universe. I thought Buddhism was just about meditating and going to nirvana, but apparently there's more to it. It seems like there's a whole mythology that may or may not. I'm wondering if that's the main line of Buddhism or if it's kind of like other. I should look into Buddhism someday. I wonder if it's like other Chinese mythology that has been absorbed into Buddhism over the years, the way other mythologies were kind of absorbed into Catholicism as it spread around. But that's a whole different thought. But anyway, this issue is packed with all kinds of cool ideas, cool little twists for the characters. I don't want to give it all away. Like there's a great twist on the last page. There's a twist about who or what Wonder Woman might actually be. That was really incredible and ties in with Chinese mythology. I think I even saw like a Hong Kong movie called The Green Snake or something, which ties in here nicely. So yeah, I don't want to give away too much or show too much. But we got all kinds of cool stuff about... It just ties in so nicely in so many different ways. Just when I thought maybe I should drop New Superman because I'm not as thrilled by this new artist, and particularly not thrilled by the coloring in here. Everything being colored the way it is, and with this art, it loses its lighter tone. It feels like a darker comic, but it's not really. It's still this wonderful mix of things, including a lot of light stuff along with the dark. And the tone remains one of a comic book, if you will, of fun. So I highly recommend the new Superman, but you might want to... This is only issue 12. You might want to read the trades and catch up. You could probably jump on and kind of figure out, but there's a lot of stuff here that's continuing to pay off from previous arcs, and especially a lot of the character stuff. So, wow, really good issue. Probably my weakest DC read of late was this Justice League, which I think is a week or two old. I picked it up when I realized it was written by Shea Fontana, who I'm curious about because I've read a lot of Shea Fontana with my daughter. She writes the DC Superhero Girls, and she writes the not only DC Superhero Girls comics and graphic novels, but also all the webisodes. And they've had some direct-to-video movies being 45 minutes long usually, I think. Maybe one of them was an hour. But so she's the key writer in all of this DC Superhero Girl stuff. And this was an enjoyable superhero comic book, and I sort of want to put superhero comic book, well, not in quotes, but in capital letters. it was like a fill-in one and done issue where a bunch of characters get little beats and an idea is played out and solved rather quickly. It was like a really professionally, slickly done Bronze Age issue. Much better than most Bronze Age issues probably were, in terms of its carefully weighted plot, well delineated characters. It would be a great issue for a 12-year-old to make their first superhero comic book, for instance. I enjoyed it fine. The artist did a great job of kind of classic DC looking art with good storytelling and everything, a lot of personality. There were some fun scenes with John, Superman's son. Like here he is trying to watch what Batman's doing. So Shea Fontana is a very talented commercial writer, if you will, it seems, judging from what I've read by her before and now seeing her do this, a different mode from the very innocent DC superhero girls. But there's still kind of a purity here, just a pure superhero story. For some people, I think this will be really great. I enjoyed it, but I also felt like, this is not aimed at me particularly. And I want to read it with my daughter, but the idea of little microbes, there's little microbes in here that kind of get all over the heroes, and that was too disturbing to her. My daughter is becoming more and more disturbed by any kind of body stuff. So there's a lot of stuff she can't take in right now. There's a new series of the show Winx. If any of you have daughters, you might have heard of Winx, the superpowered fairies who originate from Italy, I think. But anyway, and done in a manga style. Anime style. But anyway, apparently the newest season had something in it that was too gross for her, and she stopped watching it. She won't tell me what it was. But I really enjoyed this issue of Batman Detective Comics. And much to my shock, I saw a Joshua Hayes video that came out today or yesterday where he was kind of down on this issue. He didn't say it was awful, but he said it continued the downward slide of Batman Detective Comics. And I have thought that, like, the last two issues of the Cassandra Cain story with her mother, what was her mother's name? Lady Shiva. I thought that had lost some momentum and got lost into giant fight scenes and easy answers to things. And then I kind of liked the last issue, which was kind of a one and done issue about Spoiler, which I assume we'll come back to later. But then I really thought this issue picked back up as a kind of great team book. This team doesn't have a name, the Detective Comics team, the Batman and his Dark Knights of Gotham or something. But there's quite a large cast of characters, and I really liked the way the story flowed and the way the characters were given the right beats. In a way, I suppose it's comparable to the slickness of this Shea Fontana Justice League. But it has more character quirks and dark corners and adult-ish aspects to it compared to that Justice League. And it really, I used to really feel a long time ago, half a year ago, 2 years ago, that James Tynion did not have, for me, that beat, that swing to his, that groove to his storytelling. But now I really felt in the groove with the storytelling here. And Joshua Hayes complained about some of the aspects of it being too cheesy or too on the nose, but I really kind of enjoyed it, all within accepting, that each of these characters is going to get a small little bit of time. I enjoyed the art a lot. I thought it was very good Batman art, and I liked the large number of double-page spreads of storytelling. Although I could complain occasionally. My computer went to sleep. occasionally it was a little hard to tell that you were supposed to be reading across the two double pages. Yeah, this first one was the worst. It was hard to see that was a continuous picture that I was supposed to be looking at. But once I got the hang of that, I really like that format of storytelling, having lots of these double page spreads, and each double page spread seemed to be one beat in a way. So I thought this was a really good issue, and I'm really looking forward to more. I felt like it set up the appearance of the next guest starring superhero for next issue really well. I really enjoyed a scene with Bruce Wayne going kind of undercover in Cobblepot's casino in the room with the high rollers. I all these little details I enjoyed. Like I enjoyed the way it showed who all the people were around the what are they playing, blackjack or something, or maybe it doesn't say what game they're playing, but Harry Day Jr., former movie star, 3 drug arrests in the last month. Funky Flashman, talent promoter, currently under investigation by the IRS. Those of you who know your comic book history, Funky Flashman first appeared in a Jack Kirby Mr. Miracle episode or issue, and he was clearly a take on Stan Lee, and he had a sidekick named House Roy, who was clearly Roy Thomas. So I don't know how many times Funky Flashman has appeared in DC continuity, but I loved seeing him here. He doesn't look a lot like Stan Lee, but the big thing about Funky Flashman when Jack Kirby did him is he wore a toupee, and we had a long scene where he puts on his toupee and does his look so he looks young and groovy. Anyway, that was cool to see. I liked Killer Moth, Not a Threat. So anyway, I hope that this whole arc continues with this rhythm and this technique that Tinian is using here. I'm waiting to see. I feel like Tinian has stuck the landing on some of his story arcs since he's taken over Batman Detective Comics, and some of them have kind of petered out for me. However, overall, Detective still remains this really fun comic book to read. Still amazed that it's Tinian because I just never liked his writing before. And I hope it goes on a long way like this as a group book. This is the kind of group book I want to read over the Justice League or over the Avengers. They all share this kind of darker mission. Anyway, so it's a lot of fun. I guess I'm now with the DC Comics, just because of the way I happen to order them, I'm kind of ending on a lower note. There's nothing bad about Action Comics. In fact, I guess this was a better issue than the last two, but it was continuing the story from last issue, and made me realize they hadn't set up this, what are they calling it? The Black Vault. Maybe people know the Black Vault from some other comics, or maybe from the from the Suicide Squad comics or something, but I don't know what it is, and so it was an odd thing when it was introduced, and now it plays an important role in this issue, and I don't fully understand what it is, and it's not that important. I mean, I get what it's done to Superman, but it's just this little annoyance throughout, like, wait a minute, where's some more explanation of the Black Vault? I enjoyed Zod's interaction with the other villains, so that was good. It was a fun enough issue. So maybe we'll shake this Reborn hangover. And I hope Superman interacts some more with Waller, and the two different kind of moralities that she and he represent are interesting. If she really represents morality. Yeah, so and then the revelation at the end, I guess I shouldn't spoil it, but that was kind of a cool revelation of what's been going on all this issue. And so it does make me interested in the next issue. So I guess, this is what happens to me sometimes. I talk about something and I realize I did like it. I think the bad taste left over from the previous two issues was, as I was reading it, sort of still in my mind. But it was actually a good issue. So I hope it keeps going up in that direction. So then, not really mainline DC, but definitely a DC character. I know this comic book is, its DNA is 100% DC. We go back in time and meet the Losers, which I believe was an ongoing DC World War II comic book that they were doing in the 70s that they kind of forced Jack Kirby to do. He felt he didn't ever want to do a comic book about losers, I've read, but he did it anyway, and he kind of transformed them from their regular loser kind of thing. I think the idea was they were a group that were sent on kind of death missions in World War II. I'm not sure. But anyway, Kirby did not invent them as far as I know. He just came in and wrote a short run on the Losers, which has been collected several times, and I've always meant to either buy the original copies or collect them. But there are some fun nods to other bits of comic book history. If you, this is a take on a famous Randall Crane. What's the name of that? I forgot the name of this Golden Age artist who did this famous cover that you see reproduced a lot of this superhero who kind of looks like Bug, battling a shark-like swordfish. So there was fun little nostalgic touches in here, but this was just a very, to me, unsatisfying story, and it seemed to just come out of the mist at you, and goofy things happened, and then it was over. There was lots of great visual stuff, though. I love these robots that look like plugs, who are robots working for General Electric, as he will become called in the future. The snowy setting maybe was not the best for Laura Allred's colors, but anyway, now as I'm looking through it again, I'm feeling the fun of it more as I was trying to follow the plot. And I was trying to remember from the last episode what supposedly this connects to the previous issue. And was he somehow sent on a mission through time to do something? I don't even remember that from the last issue. I just remember a bunch of dream stuff. So, I don't know. Looking through it now, it seems more fun. But I found it just as much of a, at least on my first read through, just as much of a letdown as the first issue of Bug. But I thought that since I had lowered my expectations, I would enjoy it more. But even with my lowered expectations, it frustrated me. But obviously, great art. I'm still getting Bug, and I have a feeling now as I page through it, once I get over the whole series being not what I'd hoped it would be, it'll probably be one of those things that'll be fun to go back to. The kind of thing that I'll find some oddity in the dollar book section and be so thrilled by it, but if I'd bought it back when it came out, I probably would have had a different kind of reaction to it. I was really psyched for All Time Comics Atlas #1. It has this amazing cover by, what's the name of that artist? Dos Passos or something like that? Does it say somewhere here? Where did I read? Somewhere I read his name. I went with the cover. Anyway, this cover was so cool, and I did quite like the last all-time comics called Bullwhip, which had all kinds of jokes about fetishes and feminism and sexism and stuff like that. This issue of Atlas was an okay read, and I really enjoyed seeing Benjamin Marra now doing both the inking and the penciling, because before I think there was an issue that he inked, and then there was an issue that he penciled and Al Milgram inked, but now he's doing it all, and I really enjoyed that, and his artwork goes really well with this kind of over-the-top color, and feels like just the right kind of artwork to have on this newsprint paper that it comes on. But I kind of read it and then it left my mind. It didn't stick with me. Although it does have, these scenes where there's kind of this Atlas guy's sidekick getting burned alive, and the Atlas is seemingly too late to save him. Although I guess he takes him. The guy looks like a crisp to a cinder, but he does take him to the hospital later and is told he'll be all right, but you don't really believe it. So it has more the feel of an underground comic, but I don't know, it doesn't hook into superheroes enough or kink up the superheroes enough or something to do a whole lot for me. I enjoyed it while I read it. Oh, and then at the end, we have his girlfriend killed or fried to a crisp, seemingly killed. I liked that it went a little bit to places that normally the superhero comics that it's making fun of would not go to. But I don't know, it needed to play something up or do something more with it. All of these have been written by Josh Bayer, who apparently is also the editor of this series. But this one was co-written by Benjamin Marra. And so I think it might have... I have a feeling that Benjamin Marra gave it what edge it had. Although this writer wrote Bullwhip and I liked it, but he also wrote Crime Destroyer, which really did nothing for me. But I've told my shop to get all of these comics for me. Somehow they intrigued me. All of these all-time comics. I have enough of a big fan of the Bronze Age, especially the early Bronze Age, to enjoy seeing this at least attempt at an underground comics version of the Bronze Age. And speaking of underground comics versions of things, I also read Space Rider's Galaxy of Brutality issue number 2. I don't know if I came on video and talked about issue number 1, which I felt like the artist, Alex Zurett, is that his name? Alexis Zurett had reached new levels of his kind of Black Velvet underground art, B-movie aesthetic of his art had gotten even better. And I learned, because I heard a podcast interview with the writer of this, I learned that Zurett does his own coloring. Maybe that was obvious from the credits, but I don't think it is totally obvious. It just says art by Zurett. So these wild colors are, definitely part of his own personal artistic vision. And so I continued to really enjoy that on the art and color level. If you were to look closely at the pages around the panels, they're all made to look like deteriorating paper. I know you probably can't see that on camera, but so it's as if it was published on the pulpiest possible paper, although it's actually published on very slick paper that is quite thick and can hold all this ink without warping it all. But in the first issue, I kind of felt like the writer wasn't doing much. There wasn't much there in terms of the writing, and the first series, although on the surface the writer didn't seem to be doing much either, there actually did seem to be a kind of cohesion to it and a characterization that really worked. But here in the second issue, the writing becomes even more spaced out, if you will, and lacking cohesion. Things just seem to happen. People disappear to another universe, and then someone thinks about them, and then they come back. And why did they disappear to the other universe? I thought that's where they were supposed to go, but no, they were brought back, and now the action starts. And just people kind of appear. There was one intriguing fact where the captain, I can't remember his name now, the main hero, who's this, tough ass biker from hell kind of space captain. His mother appears, and we get a little bit of a backstory of her. You know, it's starting to irritate me about a lot of Black Mask comics. I mean, like this one is really good, or visually very good. They always stick these previews at the end. I never read them. And I just feel like they could give us more value in the content other than the 20-page story and then a preview at the end. Letters pages, interviews, extra art. Because I just don't want to read 4 pages of something. Maybe that works for other people and serves as a good preview for things. I do look at art online to preview stuff, but I don't want to read just 4 pages from the middle of some other comic. And whenever you do, because that occasionally happens in Image Comics too, whenever you do, it just doesn't really give you a good sense of whether you want to read that comic or not. It's just kind of frustrating to me. Grass Kings. This is the 4th issue of Grass Kings, and it's a really nice package. I think it's the only Boom comic I get in. It doesn't feel to me like other Boom comics. I don't know if it feels like it has kind of a slow pace, and that this might be kind of a long series. Seems like usually when Boom does creator-owned stuff, it'll just go for like 6 or 8 issues. But it really has a unique watercolor look, or fairly unique. I think there's 1 or 2 other people who occasionally do watercolor like this. And it's definitely a very unique idea in comics, or I've never seen this in comics or novels before, of this kingdom within America, just sort of people who've decided to live separately and somehow have managed to make it work. I'm a little less convinced as to how they do make it work. They're now coming into conflict with this kind of evil sheriff of the town next door, but why didn't they have any of these problems before? I don't know. And there is some kind of history between them and the sheriff that's a little hard for me to understand. Like, their policeman perhaps used to work with this sheriff, but if that's so, it doesn't make sense in terms of their separation from the world, which I thought had been going on, for 50 or 100 years. I can see why the flashback material is done in a more sketchy, splotchy way, but it kind of threw me out of the story. It was just too visually much of a mess. So I think because of that long flashback sequence, I didn't get into this as much as I might have hoped. And Matt Kint only gives us a little bit of characterization per issue, and I'm starting to get a little bit more of a hang of this character, and I wish I had more of a feeling of the whole community, since it's supposed to really be about the community, I think. The Grass Kingdom. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely happy to keep getting it for its uniqueness and its high quality in many ways. Even though I seem to be more gripped by superhero stories this week, and that's this week so far, because I may read some more over the weekend. With an exception being Richard Corbin's Shadows on the Grave. Excuse me. I just have a frog in my throat, dust in my throat. As many of you already know, this is an anthology of horror stories done in black and white. And many of us who've been discussing it here on YouTube have had a little bit of trouble with the briefness of the stories, and I've started to get used to that. And I feel like this issue upped the intensity level somehow, and the art seemed to maybe be clicking on a even higher than usual level for Corbin, so I really, as much as I can groove on disturbing horror stories, I really grooved on the disturbing horror stories. I thought the first one about this guy who forces his way into this woman's house was a little he forces his way into her house because he's lost and he has nowhere else to sleep for the night. But I think it had a lot of cool visual stuff, and maybe that was almost enough to carry it, but it was the weakest story of the issue. But there's a number of cool scenes where her house looks like a creature with a mouth that's going to eat him. I'm trying to find the best picture of that here, and now I can't find it. That's weird. Where did it go? Oh, there. I love that picture there. Her ramshackle house is like some mad creature eating people. And then this kind of typical horror story about someone who keeps themselves young by being in the mirror. Still, it was done in a way that it felt a little different than before. And I just really liked it. That I felt like Corbin was really into it, and that made me really get into it. It's interesting, a lot of his characters are biracial or hard to pin down if they're African American or a mix of some other things, or sometimes they'll look somewhat Caucasian. And yet they always look consistently to be themselves. But it's a funny thing the way he does that. I think it's really cool. And then this one creeped me out the most was this one called Blind Choice. I guess I don't want to give away the twist at the end. This has quite the twist in it. It would have been like a really good story in Creepy back in the day, in my opinion. And again, and Corbin does an interesting thing of making the world kind of shadowy and half visible because his protagonist is a blind woman. So maybe she has a sense of the physical world out there, but not many of the details. Maybe just representing how she hears things and stuff. But she definitely makes a bad choice in the end. And is probably not going to work out that well for her, but that's left to go off the page. And then we get the chapter 5 of this Danaeus story, which supposedly links up to Den, but I'm seeing less and less how it possibly could. But it's kind of this bizarre, warped Greek myth. And this episode of it was really creepy, really effectively creepy. And Danaeus has been my least favorite part of these Shadows on the Grave, but it kind of is starting to redeem itself in my eyes, so to speak. Not that I hated it. And on top of that, there's also there's a color one-page little horror scene in the back, and a one-page little horrific riff on the inside front cover. So this just seemed packed with Richard Corbin kookiness and creepiness. Very creepy. So how did I find time to read all of those? Normally I don't read that many comics within 2.5 days. I'm not sure what I did. I did read a few things in my car, like after running errands and things like that. So, and I just felt like getting my thoughts out. Whether or not, since I've been putting out so many videos, I don't know how many people will have made it all the way to the end here. But I more and more realize I somehow am a bit addicted to making these videos about what I've been reading. And I'm not sure if it's narcissism or why do people like doing diaries? Like, what is it really that a diary is about? I don't know. It feels like a diary, even though it's only about my reading for the most part. And of course, my little dragon, which last weekend I got no reading done. We went away on a vacation, and in a little tourist trap store, me and my daughter each bought a dragon. And some crazy lollipop for her. Okay, talk to y'all later. Bye-bye.